Upfront and Outspoken with Bob Williams. If you love the Constitution,
man is not free unless government is limited.
if you love freedom,
As government expands, liberty contracts.
if you believe in personal responsibility, if you believe America is still the greatest nation on earth, then get ready for an experience you'll never forget. This is Upfront and Outspoken. Here's your host, Bob Williams.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue.
And welcome back. This is, of course, Upfront Outspoken. I'm your host, Bob Williams, on this Thursday morning. I'm going to forego giving out the weather because everybody knows this weekend, if you're a duck, you're going to love it. If you're not a duck, well, then grab that umbrella. The reason I'm foregoing it, because on the phone with me is my guest for this last segment. She is the host of Half Empty, Half Full that you can hear tonight at 11 o'clock on Tan Talk Radio, WTAN in Clearwater, Florida. She makes her debut here on the Starcom Radio Network tomorrow at 4 p.m. I'm talking about none other than Laurie Zoock. She's a consumer advocate. Good morning, Laurie, and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, Laurie, tell us a little bit first about your show, what people can expect, and then I've got a couple of questions I want to ask you.
Certainly. My show is called Half Empty, Half Full, like is the glass half empty or half full. And we kind of cover problems to solutions. It's all consumer advocacy. It can be different topics, anything from healthcare, alternative healthcare. And we can swing all the way out to mortgage and appraisal fraud. It's so varied. But what I try to do is cover all of these different topics, and I have an expert or professional come onto the show, and I ask them a lot of questions. Usually, I try to keep it in an order so that the listeners are going to learn something. And that's the entire purpose of the show, is to educate people so that they can make wise decisions by doing their due diligence, especially before they hire somebody or a company.
You know, yesterday, when you bring up about doing due diligence, yesterday I had the opportunity to interview a lady who was talking about how she was defrauded of a substantial amount of money. And I wanted to ask you, are banks really that bad as far as embezzling money from people?
Well, yes, in some cases they are, and there are lots of cases of bank executives that do embezzle money. You can actually Google it, and you'll probably be surprised with what you will see. So it does happen. And remember, we say banks are stealing the money. It's not the banks. It's the people within the banks or the executives at the top of the chain at the bank. So, yes, people who work in banks do steal money, just as they do in any other industry.
So so my next question is, what are some of the steps that our listeners can take to ward off this onslaught?
Well, it's a tough question because in the example of the woman that you were speaking about, it sounds like her lawyer was involved, So for a consumer who has money in the bank, I would suggest that you monitor your banking online and question any transactions. If you don't know what it is, you have the right to question it, and also to get a written response. The reason for that, someone can tell you anything on the phone, but the next time you call, you might not get the same person with the same answer. So anytime you question something, you want a response back that's in writing.
Now, the next question is the lady I spoke with yesterday said that she tried to contact the banks, but they refused to divulge this information. I always thought that banks were required that if you are a client of theirs and you made this request, I want to see my bank statements, I want an explanation, they have to give it to you. Do banks have to give this information to you? And if they refuse to, what would be the next step for you to take?
Well, of course they have to give it to you. To give it to you, that would be a requirement. If you are the client, you have a right to see anything, especially in a case where it's going to court. So if she had an attorney under discovery, they would have or should have been able to pull those documents. What's very, very, I don't know what the word is, suspicious, is that they didn't turn over any of the documents. And also what's suspicious is the fact that it almost seems like her attorney turned on her. Now, everyone says, well, the bank, must give you the documents. Whatever the company is, they must give you the documents. Well, let me ask you, who's going to make them?
That's a good question.
Who's going to make them? Even if it's a law, who's going to make them?
So what do we do as consumers to keep our bank accounts safe, to keep our money in these banks safe, so we don't see the same thing happening to the average guy that happened to this particular lady?
Well, like I suggested, the best way is to actually monitor your accounts online, and I mean at least a minimum of weekly. Honestly, I monitor my bank accounts every day. I want to know what is going on, and like I said, I question any transaction that's not correct. I'm going to give you a quick example. Probably about a year ago, I saw a PayPal transaction, and I do have a PayPal account, but it didn't match up with anything that corresponded to anything at the bank. So I actually called my bank, and I called PayPal, and we did a three-way conversation where my bank and PayPal were able to figure out that the transaction was actually fraudulent, and they couldn't track it down. My bank refunded the money. But had I not been looking online to see what was happening every day, I might have just missed this little $60 transaction, which is not a lot of money, but to some people it is. And hey, how often could that happen? It's the same thing with people with credit cards. They don't look at their online statements or their paper statements. It comes in and they pay it. And now if you have a problem, the bank typically won't go back more than 3 months to refund you any money. So they get away with it. You didn't question it. You're the consumer. It's your responsibility to look at your own statements.
And it makes me wonder why people aren't more. I'm at a loss for words. Excuse me?
Do you wonder why people are not more diligent?
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm glad to thank you for I had a brain fart, there for a second there. Why aren't people more diligent about this? I mean, are they just under the assumption the banks know what's best?
Well, in the olden days, years ago, I think there was a lot more honesty within the banks, or within any industry. Nowadays, people are too busy. There's too many things going on. The economy is bad. They're worried about money. If they have kids, they're doing this, they're doing that, and they don't have time. And I think to myself, well, wow, don't spend so much time on the computer or on Facebook. Why don't you actually take time and learn something that can help you? And I'll be honest with you, I'm probably one of the few people that almost never watches television.
Well, you're
not the radio, and I'd rather learn something new, because now the media just slants everything.
Well, you're not the only one. I don't watch cable either. It's bad enough getting all my news feeds online, but the thing that really bothers me as a consumer. I mean, I go to my bank. I trust my bank. I make my payments, for my house. I make my car payments, everything on time. And I assume, like so many others, that my bank is being honest with us. But yet I'm seeing, time and time again on the net, like I said, where I get my news feeds from CBS and all the news agencies. But I see more that these banks are not like they were, like you said, like 20, 25 years ago, where you could trust them. As a consumer, how do we, what would be the first step? I mean, to say to the bank, look, guys, I don't know if I can trust you anymore.
Well, I'll give you a really simple answer to that. The larger banks, for example, that were involved with the mortgage crisis, the big name banks that were involved, and basically their executives got away, with what they did. In effect, they actually, I believe, caused it to happen. Well, here's my question to you, and to all consumers. If you know that a bank did this, which again, it's not a bank, it's the executives within that bank that run that operation. If you know they did that, then why do you bank with them? And I will tell you, I took my accounts, all of my money, out of one of these big banks because I saw what they were doing to people, to real people, to consumers. And I then went to a smaller bank that was not involved with the foreclosure crisis, and that was my punishment. But I'm only one person. So I'm going to kind of throw it back at you here and say, why do people still utilize these big banks? Because you're giving them your money, and this is what they're doing with it. So I am boycotting the big banks.
So our best bet as a consumer, is hit them where it hurts, and that's in the pocketbook.
Correct.
But it always amazes me that you see this over and over and over again, where the big banks, they only ended up with fines. None of the people that were instrumental in people losing all their money, the banks and the foreclosures on the homes and all that, they got away with it. Maybe a peon or two, and I hate to put it that way, but it's true. They are the ones that they went to jail, but these executives, not only are they making millions of dollars in bonuses, they just got a little slap on the hand and conduct business as normal.
Correct. And let me tell you what's even scarier. The New York Times came out with an article within the last few weeks that said banks are coming back with subprime mortgages. They're edging their way back in.
That's the same thing that caused the calamity in the first place.
Exactly. And, there may be circumstances where there are people who qualify and can afford to pay it back, and they're a good credit risk. But if you start doing the same thing over again, it's like saying, oh, well, let's just make the same mistake all over again. We haven't even recovered from the last event, but yet people's memories are very short. And remember, most people watch TV, and they do watch the news, and they're desensitized to bad news because it becomes normal. But the truth is, it's not normal at all. So, therefore, I personally cannot watch the news because I know it's slanted. It is slanted, but people become desensitized. Just like some people can watch movies with a lot of violence. They become desensitized to it.
Yeah, I've been bringing that up all along about the desensitizing people. In fact, I've said it over and over again here that news is no longer news, that it's actually in the entertainment departments of these major networks. And if you don't believe me, folks, go check it out yourself. Why would they put some blonde-haired, big-boobed bimbo in front of a monitor reading a teleprompter when the real news is going on and she's just like, I don't know. But
remember, that's also marketing. One of the things I have learned is that newscasters, especially the women, the producers want their hair a certain color. They're looking for a certain image or a certain ethnicity to appeal to a certain race. It's all about the marketing and the package and the presentation. It's not actually about the news.
Exactly. Once again, for everybody that may have just tuned in, I'm talking to Laurie Zoock. She is the host of Half Empty, Half Full, which premieres here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central Time on the Starcom Radio Network. And I'm glad to have Laurie along because I'm learning a lot. It sounds like you may think, oh, well, Bob, you ain't learning nothing. You're asking the questions. No, I am. I am learning things. And, I'm not as hard-headed as people think I am. And if that sneaks out to my boss, I'm going to get in trouble. But the thing is, a lot of people, Laurie, too, are concerned about other aspects, not just of banking, but other things regarding what they can do to get what's the word? Reparations from corporations. I mean, companies that don't back up a guarantee, or how a person can go about filing a complaint. what is some of the advice you can give to, say, the mom who just came home from the store, has this toy, for her kid, it breaks, it's under warranty, it wasn't the kid's fault, but the store doesn't back it up, and then the company won't back it up. What kind of advice would you offer them?
Well, there are a number of ways to file complaints online, and that's probably one of the things I would do. A lot of people nowadays use Twitter to tweet out to the company because it will give that company negative publicity. Now, if the child got hurt, then it becomes a product liability situation where they would, have to hire an attorney if there was an injury involved there. But there are different agencies that handle different things within the government. For example, if it had been a financial injury, they could go through the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So it depends on exactly what the situation is. Usually there's an agency that will help you, but also here's another thought for you. You can use the media to your advantage, and most television networks do have investigative reporters that will, take on a situation like this where they can then go ahead and contact the company because it becomes a public embarrassment to that company. One other thing they can do that often generates results, again, through the media, is to use a site called ripoffreport.com. And that site allows people to file complaints against people or other companies. So there are a lot of ways that you can get things accomplished. You might end up with a good situation. However, be prepared, you might not be. Now, also, if she had purchased the toy with a charge card and it had broken and the company wouldn't honor it, then a lot of times the charge card company may reverse it and charge it back. So that's a good example of using a charge card for protection.
And that's something everybody should be made aware of, that you do have certain rights if you have a credit card. It seems more so than if you go to a store and pay cash, because now all you got is that receipt and you're battling them.
That's right.
And it can be difficult. We've got about 3 minutes to go yet, Laurie, and I want people to know, number one, how they can contact you, how can they, what kind of, what's your website, basically, give me the lowdown.
Well, the easiest way to contact me for the show is through Facebook on Half Empty, Half Full. My telephone number is 813-777-4908. I will be in the process of developing an actual web page shortly. For now, I am just using Facebook. It seems to be, sufficient. But I try to point people in the right direction when somebody has wronged them.
And everybody, I encourage you, if you've ever run across a situation where you feel you've been wronged by a company, or a company doesn't want to back up their guarantees, or like Laurie and I were discussing earlier about potential issues with your bank, I encourage you to please contact her, find out more. And it's sad that we as Americans are overlooking some of the basic rights we have as consumers, and I'm glad Laurie has come on to the network. Once again, Laurie, on behalf of all the network, we are glad to have you aboard, and we look forward to your first show tomorrow at 4 p.m.
Yes, I want to thank you so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
And everybody, I want Laurie to stay on for just a minute, because we got about 30 seconds, and then we got to take off here. But I do want to encourage you. Don't let your misinformation dictate what you are doing. Stay informed, stay current, stay on top of your bank accounts, stay on top of what the bank does, stay on top of what goes on. And, there's a lot of things in this world that it breaks down, and companies don't want to back up to it. So stay informed, stay out there, find out how you can get reparations from the company. And with that, it is time for me to get out of here. Stay tuned, because coming up here at the bottom of the hour, none other than Ed Till will be here all the way up until 4 p.m. Until tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., this is Bob Williams. Take care of yourselves.